again, I'm going to go over the next part of this project right now. And before I do, just a couple things I want to say, and I'll try to repeat them this afternoon. But you're all in all three of the classes today, so just wanted to kind of say this. It's lab in both classes this afternoon. Next Tuesday, I'm going to go over Chapter 7, which is that Doodles program. I'm going to go through that in Android. Then we'll have a week of lab. Then I'm going to go over Chapter 8, which is the address book program. So that's going to be, and then we'll have a lab. So the next couple weeks in Android will be lecture on Chapter 7, lab, lecture on lab, lecture on Chapter 8, lab. So all that makes sense? So that's what we're going to do. And in the iOS class, what I'm going to do starting next week is, rather than going through, because the stuff in the book is so complex, what I'm trying to do is basically write a more simplistic program for you, and we'll write that program as a class. We're going to do that the next 6 Thursdays. All right? And what I'll do is I'll make sure that every program that we write, I'll have the completed copy of it already in the, out there on the system. So you'll be able to copy that in if you want to. I tried to clean up Blackboard today, and it was great. I'm so glad. You guys don't know this and probably don't care, but it's one of those things today where, as goofy as this is going to almost sound to say, I actually did something a while back. I'm not even sure why I did this. Of course, I can't do it from here. But what I decided to do a while back, I'll show you this, was to take every single thing that I have, there it is, every single thing that I have out on Blackboard, and all the titles, and then all the YouTube stuff, okay? Probably makes sense to you, so I got it broken up for all classes. Well, this morning, because I've been told we're supposed to start cleaning up the Blackboard stuff for fall, okay? So what I did was I went and cleaned up all the last spring stuff for Android and for iOS, not realizing I didn't clean up last spring stuff. I cleaned up this spring stuff. So I removed all of those. All of these were not the dip, but all these I had to go back and put on again. And if I didn't have those in there with the names and stuff, that would have been such a pain in the butt, me searching through YouTube for those. All right, and the other one's not bad. There's only been about 10 lectures in this class. But there's been, in the iOS class, there's actually been, it's like 39 lectures between the ones I've done in class and the ones I've done on my own. All right. But for the iOS class now, all the stuff for Chapter 7, that Pickers program, it's all done. It's in 6 different lectures. All right. And starting tomorrow, my wife at least told me she's going to go visit her mom, which means I'll have the house to myself. So I'm going to start on Chapter 8 tomorrow. So I hope to have that done by Monday. Chapter 9 too? Well, I'd like to. I'd like to actually start doing 3 chapters a week, because then in 5 weeks I'd have the whole book done with what's left in it. But we'll see how well that does or doesn't work. No, but what you can do is you can do this. You can just go out to here, which is the YouTube channel. You should be able to go out there, and it's got, everything literally should be out there from there. That should be the thing for the channel. So they're all there. They're all there, and it's broken up by class. So you've got it all in there. Like see how all the stuff is actually in there. You can segregate it by class. All right. But the problem is, even if I did that, I'd still have to go and click on each one of those links, so I could get, like this one here. If I clicked on that, I'd have to click here so I could grab that.
All right, hello again. Jeff Scott of Black Hawk Technical College, coming at you right now with 152, 153 mobile web development iOS class.
But I just checked those first 2 classes, and I already found some errors in there. So that's why I hate putting that stuff out there, because it could be wrong. So I've gone through 2 of my 6 classes for the semester. I've got all that stuff, and I've even got my stuff from last semester. Or I had it. Maybe yeah. There's the stuff from last semester, too. Even the Joomla and all that stuff. All that stuff is out there. Yeah. If you look for it and you can't find it, just let me know. All right? All right. So, jumping back into the virtual desktop. As I just said, maybe you saw this. Whoops. But I said you can go out and, okay, I don't know where it is now. Go out to the P drive for the class, and there's a folder out there with today's date on it, 03/19/2015. I'm going to copy that folder, so I just literally going to take it, come on, and also have open XAMPP under htdocs under your virtual desktop. So there that is. There's htdocs. So I'm going to grab that folder with today's date on it, the 319 folder. And I'm going to copy it into here. All right, that's what I'm going to show you right now. There is a boatload of stuff in here. Everybody hear what I just said? There's a boatload of stuff in here. So I did not start up XAMPP, so start that up. Yes. The ones for that Site 5? Yeah. They come with a control panel, and supposedly that control panel, it's not a stupid question at all. The question was, with the new Site 5 stuff that John's setting up for everybody, that you all have access to, you should all have your own control panel. I believe he told me that he put on there, I think, you'd have to ask him for sure, I haven't even looked at mine, MySQL is out there, Joomla is out there, WordPress is out there, I don't know what else. What I've asked is that once he's got everything, everybody's got their stuff filled out, I asked if he'd come in and talk to you guys once and then talk to the first year people also and show them what it is, have everybody log in and make sure they can get into it, and then show you how to get into the control panel. All right, because yeah, I mean technically yes, you could be putting your stuff out on there even for your project and whatever. That'd be nice to do that. To me, that would look much more professional doing it that way. No, it wasn't a stupid question at all. You know, I've said this before, but when people say to me, you know, I want to ask you this, I know it's a stupid question. There's only been a couple times ever that it's been a stupid question. You know, I mean, where somebody's really asked something so off the wall, I'm like, wow, that's, yeah. There've been just a couple of those, you know, in 25 years of doing this. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times, like I had a guy asked it the other day, one of the first instances. He goes, "I know this is a dumb question. I should know it." You know what? No one had ever asked it before, and it was a really good question. So this is where we are. So when it comes up like this is the index file, and you'll notice that right now, no one's name is chosen. So we've got our header, we've got our content area, and we've got our footer. Not real much in it right now. All right, but if I come in here, and since he just asked, if I choose Mike Lemon right there, notice how it fills up. All right, I still could have done a better job, as I mentioned the other day, with sizing in here. This looks so funky because that was actually a landscape image, and I'm showing it portrait. That's why it looks squishy like that. All right, just so you know, that was on me. I should have resized it, and I didn't. So hopefully these are the ones that you chose out of those 5. Forrest Gump, Godfather 1 and 2, Shawshank, and Silence of the Lambs. So that's where we are right now. You'll notice too that as I moved to somebody else, so when I moved to Travis, notice how the name changes here. And is that a big thing? No, but it's doing it automatically, and it's doing that in code. And the movie's changed. All right. So again, by the time you come in here next Tuesday, if I can get it up to this point, now you'll be able to take one of those movies like E.T. and drag it in here, and rather than having it just look filled, literally E.T. will be removed from there, and it'll go back over here in its right alphabetic order. All right, and when you go and you click on one of these hearts, so if I go and click on Casablanca, it's going to be removed from there, and it's going to be moved over to here in alphabetic order. Does all that make sense? So that's what we're moving toward. Now, when you look at this, you can also log out where you get right back to where we started. Okay, so if I go to view the page source, okay, remember, what this is showing me right here And I showed you this the other day, and you look at it and you go, well, it doesn't look all that different, or that this or that. Yeah, but this really isn't index.php. This is what actually resonates when you run index.php. I'll take your question, but I just want to say this first, and that is, if you go out here, and if I go out to C:\xamp, htdocs, 0319, dip project, part 3, and I open up index, this is going to probably look different than any other index file you've ever seen. Because notice what it is. We're setting our path here. We're telling the system, all right, we're telling the system that, hey, when you're looking for functions, all right, they're probably going to be in this functions folder. Okay? But notice the rest of the stuff. That is creating what you just saw on screen. Because what it kept doing and doing and doing is taking the code and taking all of the PHP code out and putting it into individual files. So we're going to look at each one of these files in just a minute so you can see what they're made of. All right, go ahead. No. The question was, did I hard code that list? No. There's nothing hard coded in here at all. It's all going off the database. So like I said, what we're going to do, I got to stop. You guys aren't hearing this, but I must have my mail. I was going to say I must have the mail open, because every time I get a mail, you know how you get the ding? I keep hearing dings in here. So now that won't happen anymore. So let's take a look at these files to see how that happens, and we'll go back and we'll look at this also in just a minute. All right? So we'll just take them from the top. And you'll notice, first of all, we've got this functions folder. All right, and look what that functions folder has in it. Showmovies.fn for functions, showusers.fn, testfav.fn, testmovies.fn, and testusers.fn. And the question, no one's asked it yet, but a natural question would be, okay, you've got 5 different files that all have this .fn in them. Could you have had just one file and put everything in there? The answer is yes. But would you want to do that? Because in other words, this is only handling the show movies page. You see what I'm saying? So what we're doing basically is we're segregating that information out, which is a good idea to do. We're doing a total modularization here. So when we look at this, let's see. So I showed you what the index is, and we're going to look at these in order. So the first is test users function. Now, there's really, first of all, notice, not very big. And this is all the kind of stuff we talked about before. I'm asking you this question. What does that mean? That line that's in gray right now, line 7. What does that mean? No. Yes. They're global, and what it means is someplace else in the program, these have been declared. Someplace else. We don't know where. But if we don't put that in, if we don't put global, we could have done it global DB, semicolon, global user ID, etc. All right. But the point is, if we didn't do that, remember with PHP, if it doesn't have a variable, it can't find it, it makes a new one. That sure isn't what we want. We want to use the global ID, or the global user ID, and the global DB, which is our database connection variable. All right. So we come in here, select everything from moviegoers table. Then we tell it to try to run the query and tell us how many rows we have. Okay? Now, how many people should be in there? Well, take a look once. Remember, if I do this, if I type in my SQL -u root, and I come in there and I use movies, that one of my tables that's in there, so if I show tables, one of the tables that's in there is moviegoers, right? So I can do this. I can say select star from moviegoers. Maybe you remember that from last semester. And it shows me that there's 14 people in there right now. Okay? Me, John, Mike, because Steve wasn't here then, everybody else in this class. And then I set one up that's called likes no movies, so there would be nothing showing on the left-hand side and everything on the right-hand side. And another one that I call likes all movies, where everything is on the left-hand side, and nothing's on the right-hand side. All right. But remember, if I asked you how many people were in there, you could run this. That's not a problem. But what if you had 10,000 people in there? Do you really want to run select star from moviegoers and wait till it gets down to the bottom to show you got 10,000 people in there? Remember this? That easier? All right. So that shows us that we've got 14 people in there without having to run any other kind of command. All right. So why am I even telling you that? Well, when you look at this, we're saying select star. So that's giving us all 14 people from the moviegoers table. All right. And this is saying actually run that query. Then this says, tell me how many rows I got. Well, it's possible that the first time I do this, or if for some reason, let's say that my moviegoers table gets corrupted and I remove it, it's possible I don't have any people in there. So it's always nice to have some kind of a message that lets them know there's no data. You know, something, whatever it happens to be. All right? And if I try to run this, and what if you saw those user IDs, what if somebody tries to come in here through the back door, and instead of putting it in here, they figure out how to do it by putting in their own user ID? But let's say that it's Travis, and his user ID is 6, but he fat fingers and he types in 66. Well, when you look there, there's no ID of 66. So if that's the case, it's going to come back and say invalid ID. All right? So now it's given us these 14 people. And now we're going to come in and we're going to say, now, based on whoever we chose here, so if it's Mark, all right, so I just chose Mark Lestarge there, and based on that, that question mark now becomes Mark's user ID, which was 10. Does that make sense? So that's what it's doing. And it's binding that user ID, then it's executing the query, it's storing the result, and it's giving me all of that information. And all of that information that it's printing out right there, because of the way that it's been set up in the rest of the files here, it says take that information right there, those rows, and show them right here. So that's what that particular one is doing. All right. And then, I mean, that's almost all of it. Close it. If for some reason Mark didn't, you know, again, if it tried to run, all right, ID equal 10. You see it, everybody sees it up there, right? All right, I'm going to try it again, but I'm going to put in here ID equals 100. See where you got that invalid user ID? That's what we told it. And I mean, all you can do is try to tell the person, hey, bud, choose somebody from over there. All right? I can go in here and manually do this. We know that Mark's 10, but we know we know that, for example, that Travis is 6. So I could go ahead and put that in, and you notice it does that. And sometimes people might try to do that kind of thing just to see what would happen. So the reason that we put in some safeguards in here, invalid ID, all right, ID set, no data, no ID, that's why. Does that make sense? Yes. The question was, how can you encrypt it so that you wouldn't do it? And the answer is, I don't think there's a way to do that, because what happens is, once you come in there and you run it, you get this. Somebody can try to do it. Well, gee, I wonder what would happen if I remove this. I wonder what would happen if I did this. All right? What you can do is if they type that in directly, you may or may not remember this, but last semester, one of the things we did was we looked at that real simple change management system. And there were a couple times where you had the insert and the delete, where if you typed it in directly, it would come in and it would say, this page has been reached in error. You could do that. But they're still going to be able to at least try to do it. And there's really, I mean, if I want to go peruse my way through here, I put in 1, not 100, sorry. I put in 1, oh, there's me. So I do it again, I put in 2, oh, there's John. You know, I could do it like that. There would be a way I could peruse through it. All right? And you actually are giving them some data that way. But that data, that ID really isn't going to do much for them. And if they take their mouse and put it over here, you can see when you look down in the lower left corner that it's showing you the IDs anyway. All right. So that's the first one. John Wanda? Yeah, he was in there. It's because he's chosen. Once you're chosen, so if I choose Dave von Falkenstein, he comes out of the list, and he comes up there. I mean, we could even go nuts here. We could have little pictures. We could have little avatars for each one of you. You know, no, but sometimes they do that. If you ever sign up for anything and they ask you if you have an avatar, I've had that happen before. Or they say, should we just use basically a default one, or do you have one? Because some people do that. All right. I was going to say people who don't have lives, but that would probably sound really mean, so I'm not going to say that. All right. So that's first one. Then we've got show users function. So this test users we just looked at. So let's look at the show users function. Again, not really that big. It's less than 100 lines. And it's show users. All right. So again, we're bringing in that same stuff we brought in before. And now think about it. What do we want to do? Okay. Case all. Select star for moviegoers, order by first name. That case right there that you see, that one, that's going to end up showing this when you first run it. That's everybody. They're all 14 of them are right there. Okay? So that's what this is doing right here. Plus, we want to build this, and you may or may not have known this. That's just an unorganized list. And since it's an unorganized list, we need LIs in there for list items. All right? And the only reason I'm telling you that is that's why we have this in here. This is just going to give us the current one. And this is everybody but the current one. And I'm trying to remember because there's... Oh, and this is the one we're trying to grab a name. This is through the... This stuff that's here is through the admin function, which we haven't talked about yet. All right, because right now, the way that this is set up, this is all your administrative stuff. But, okay, so I come in there and I choose Kelly. Boom. Right now, there's not a way for me to go in and, other than clicking here, all right, I can't do anything else with Kelly's account other than I will be able to come next week, click here and move a movie over to here, and drag here and move the movie from here to here. But I can't do anything if Kelly spelled his name wrong, or, you know, if there's other information in there about Kelly, maybe I ask you for your name and address, and Kelly's moved. All right, so right now there's nothing I can do because we don't have any admin stuff, but we'll put that in, just not today. And then when we just basically we run all of it. And all this does then, so it sets, you run one of several queries, depending on, you know, are you trying to show a single user, all users, etc. Then you just grab the data. And this is just formatting it into an unorganized list. Each one of these, that's all it's doing, is it's formatting it into an unorganized list. That's it. Then we've got test movies. Now the other one was test users, so this one is test movies. So again, select star from movies. Well, you know that already. That should give us all 25 movies. But if for some reason we didn't have anything in our movies database, it'll come back and show us that. But if we do come back and we run this, that test movies function, all right, and somebody goes in and starts taking a look at that. So in other words, you come in here. I do this. Now notice it says user ID equal 8 right now, and that's Kelly, and it says movie ID equal 22. Well, what if I put in here movie ID equal 1? All right. So what did I just do? I can't manually go in there and make that one of his favorites, can I, by doing that? And that's what this code is making sure it does. It'll still show it. This is kind of what you asked before, Mike. I mean, I can come back here, and I've got the user ID. I can change that to 1, and I can change that, for example, to 11. All right? And notice it changed it to me and it changed it to movie 11. So I can do that kind of stuff, but I can do it to make it show on the screen, but I can't change anything manually doing that. All right? You're not changing it, period. This is like a select statement. So I'm saying select movie 11 for user number 1. But I'm not saying insert that into their likes or remove that because I can't do that from here. All right? But there might be a time when you go in to do this stuff that you screw up. I put in a movie ID that doesn't exist. All right, so I put in, again, I fat finger here, so I say 111. Invalid movie ID. All right, choose a moviegoer from the menu on the right. Well, basically it's returning no ID right there, and there's other code that checks that, and if it says no ID, that's the message that it gives. Invalid movie ID, please choose, etc. That kind of thing. Yeah, it kept me. Yes. Because that's legal. Now, if I come through here and I do this, now it's removed everybody. So trying to put in here everything that somebody could possibly do. And because they're going to be users who are just going to try to do this. So you might as well try, account for it when you first start to create this stuff. All right. Then we've got show movies. A little bit more complex because when you look in here, we've got a, remember these? All right. Subqueries, queries within queries. Remember these or not? Select where, and you run this first. So you find the movie ID where the ID is so-and-so's. So if it's, what'd you say year it was? 10. So that's going to select the movie ID where the favorites are for 10, and then it'll select all the movies from that and order them by title. So in other words, that query that you see right there, that one, is when you choose mark, that's what's going to give you these. And these are all Mark's non-favorites. All right. And that's what's being handled here. So that's not in. Again, there'll be some admin stuff that gets added later, so I'm not even going to talk about that. You run it and you set it up again as just an unordered list. That's all. And then finally, there's the test favorites, and you can see how big that one is. That's the whole thing. Now, you've got here, if it's less than 1, output is add to favorites. And this is removed from favorites. That's again going to be when we're doing some of the work for the admin page. There's going to be ways that other ways that you can add information in. So that's everything that's in here. So all that stuff makes sense. So the other stuff that's in here is basically everything else that's here. The connect, which we can look at, the head, etc. So let's take a look at what's in there. That's in our includes. Head. Yep. So there's connect, get variables, head, header, navigation, main, and footer. The admin stuff, again, we'll look at next week. All right, so open those. Not very much in there, right? Did that have to be a .php file? No. It's an include file. All right. So that's the header. I'm just going to switch over to the end. That's the footer. Neither one of them have very much stuff in there. You could have done it like that too, but ideally what's going to happen though eventually, the question was, could you just code that in? But eventually, what may happen is in here, you might want the header to change based on, kind of like the way that Ullman does it, where depending on the page you're on, you put a PHP variable. That's why it's done like this. So you can go back and change it later if you want to do so. All right. There's the connect. We already talked about that one last time, so I'm not even going to mention that anymore. All right. This is the rest of the stuff. Another way that we could set up a header in here, but the key thing in here is this is bringing in our style sheets. You remember this? We talked about this a little bit. I shouldn't say that. I don't even remember. Did you have a Rinda for the 157 class? Okay. Did you ever talk about the HTML5 shiv? I heard no, and I heard a little bit, but not much. All right. Versions of IE before IE8 do not really understand anything about HTML5 tags. In fact, they have a tendency, IE7, which is still in use, and 6, which is still in use. Probably between the two of them, they've got less than 10%. Everybody hear the big news about IE2? Microsoft is supposedly retiring Internet Explorer. Yeah. But what this does is it basically says that if you're running an older browser that doesn't understand HTML5 tags, just disregard them. All right? Because otherwise the program is going to, for lack of better words, it'll blow up there. And the other one that's here says if you attempt to print that stuff out in an earlier browser. So there is an HTML5 shiv which does it, and there's also one for printing. Okay. Again, IE does whatever they can to get their fixes in, you know, to make it hard for everybody else. Here's where we're setting most of our global variables. All right, not all of them, but most of them. The movie ID, the user ID, whatever page they're on, and if for some reason they try to get, you know, we talked about this before. So you come in here and you go index.php. Well, what if I put index.php instead of index.php? All right, I don't put anything there. Okay, as of right now, it's doing that, but we could create our own error page and have it go there. So when they put in something that they shouldn't put in, all right, that hasn't been implemented in here, but could be. All right. The main.php, well, take a look at what this is doing. Again, not even 100 lines. We're calling that show movies that we just talked about for both our favorites and our non-favorites. Why? Because this is going to be the list we get to generate on the left. This is going to be the list that we generate to get on the right. Okay? And I'm trying to remember why we're running test movies and test fab there, but I don't remember offhand. Okay? I think to set it up for the individual person. And then we're saying here, so this is that one guy that's called likes no movies. That's what it should say for them. You have no favorites. That makes sense because there's nothing in their favorite side. So if I come into here and I choose likes no movies, here are some movies you might like. Click on the heart icon, etc. All right? But you have no favorites, so that should be the title that's on there. You have no favorites. See that? If I do the opposite, where I've got likes all movies, now everything is over here. All right? So that's basically what we're checking for. So if it's equal to nothing, it says you have no favorites. Well, this guy has favorites, but notice the word favorites there. That word right there in blue is generated from that right there. Okay? And if you have no favorites, did you also notice this? If I go down to the bottom, oh, I thought it was implemented, but it doesn't. It's still showing it. Am I? Okay. Thank you. Likes, you're right. Likes no movies. No garbage can there. Why? Because there's nothing to dump in. Nothing to dump in. what's going to happen is let's say you remove these first four, okay? So now all that's in there is Silence of the Lambs. As soon as you move the Silence of the Lambs in here, that's going to change to no favorites, and you won't have a garbage. No. All right, and again, it looks like you like all the movies. Well, let's see if that works. Oh, that's true. Yeah. All right. See it? I had actually two blank ones, and I had the Arab Potter, and there was another blank one in there too. It says, it looks like you like all the movies. No. Yes. Yeah, because that's the only way that you're going to be able, but putting them in the trash, they're going to move it from over here to over here. And then the title's going to change. All right. So then we do all this stuff. If you put in an invalid ID, that's what I showed you before. It says invalid movie ID, choose. Again, like I said, you can only show the user so much. You know, if they're helpless, they're helpless. It's not meant to be a joke. All right. If there's no data, no movies in the database, just in case somebody the database gets corrupted or whatever. All right. If there's no ID, all right. Basically, so if there's no ID, there's nothing that's been set. So in other words, show that. Otherwise, show the person's ID. And then finally, with the navigation, much of this is from what you just saw on the previous page. So if there's no ID, we want to show all the movies because there's no ID, and tell them to choose a moviegoer. If it's invalid, you want to tell them, you want to show everybody and say choose a moviegoer. All right. If the ID is set, then you want to set everything up for that person. If the ID is set but there's no data, okay, if for some reason the table's empty or whatever, just show logged out. And to test all this stuff, all right, and I have done it, but I don't feel like doing it right now, you have to remove the database and then run the thing again. Does that make sense? To test everything, and then you have to add it back in again, but I just didn't feel like doing that. But the key thing to look at is when you look in here and you take a look at the actual code that's in here, what you're starting to see, your CSS is together, your functions are together, and they've been segregated, so they're doing just what they should do for that particular page. Your images, which right now just has the sprite stuff in it, there's an image for movies, and I will tell you that I kind of klooched a little bit. Tell me if you can tell. Let's see, I should be able to actually put them both up here. I'm going to put this one up. All right, and would you agree when you look at these two images right here? I know they're not the same image, but would you agree there's a difference in size? All right, because what I really wanted to do, and I never got around to doing it, was I wanted to change. I went into makeathumbnail.com and I just did the first one. I chose 300 by 300. And when it saved it as, I think it was like pretty close to 300 by 300. But when I did it the first time, I chose a smaller size. And the only reason I'm telling you that is because I put a hack in here. And what do I mean? Well, when you look at this, if I go, I'll choose me, and it doesn't matter which one. But when I go here and I go to The Godfather, that's a pretty good image, etc. But if I go to a different movie that's in here other than The Godfather, like this one, it's now the same size. But what I did was I took that image, which was a certain size, and I changed the size by just changing in my CSS the width and the height. You understand what I'm saying? That's a kludge. You shouldn't do that, because eventually you're going to have some kind of an image in there that's going to look really bad because you're manually changing the size. You should always go back, and if I have time, maybe I'll do it before the last version of this. But what I'm saying is I should have went back in there and changed this, but there's 24 more to change, and changed them all to 300 by 300. You should strive, because this stuff, I would want the images, if at all possible, to be of the same size. All right, that's what I'm getting to. All right, that was a lot to go over, but like I said, we'll go over some jQuery stuff in the next class, and we'll talk about how to actually implement that wastebasket. All right, so again, lab the rest of the period today, lab in both classes this afternoon. Next week, just so you hear it again, and for those people who don't come often or whatever, so I'm saying it here, next Tuesday I will lecture on Chapter 7 in the Android class, and that's on that Doodles application that they did. And then in the afternoon, we're going to write a fairly simplistic program in Swift. And the reason I'm going to do this over the next 6 weeks is this is all stuff you might try to implement into your final app that you're going to create for the end of the semester. If we go over it, does that mean we have to put it in? It depends on what your app is. If we do something that would not at all pertain to what you're doing, no. All right, but at least you'll have the opportunity to write about a half dozen more simple apps. That was what the idea was behind this. All right, so that'll be Tuesday. Next Thursday will be lab in the 2 afternoon classes. In fact, I'm going to try the rest of the semester to make the afternoon classes on Thursday's lab.